for the SLLA 6990. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat and that everything is okay. We are doing the Praxis 5412 and the SLLA 6990. Today is Saturday, January 6th, 2024. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm really excited to be with you today. I'm trying to connect to Facebook, but there we go. We're there. Awesome. Okay. So if you can hear me okay, let me know in the chat. We are so happy that you're here. I do have a colleague in the chat today. Her name is Yana. She will help you guys with any questions that you have. And you will be able to chat with one another and you will be able to get some information from her. If you're attending inside the webinar, that means that you signed up for the webinar on our webinar page. If you're looking for those resources for this webinar, if you're watching me live on YouTube or Facebook right now, you can get those resources by signing up using the link in the description, and that is inside there. So let me know if you guys have any questions. It looks like there's about 21 of you right now in. Let me know that you can hear me and see me. And also, if you have any problems, just refresh your browser and you should be good. All right, so just a quick introduction. My name is Kathleen Jasper and I own Kathleen Jasper LLC. We specialize in the Praxis exams and also the school leadership exams. We typically prep for ETS exams. So that's the big company that makes these exams. We'll go over that. And also we specialize in teacher strategies and things like that. I have a YouTube channel. I have a book for new teachers. I have like 30 study guides. We have a lot of content and resources for you. And I'm so glad you're here with us today. Now we will be working from the free study guide that you got when you signed up for the webinar. If you don't have it on you, no big deal. I'm going to be projecting everything that I'm doing on the screen today. So you don't have to rush to go get that study guide. The other thing is that you will get everything I talk about today in a follow-up email. So you don't have to rush to write everything down and all of that. When we send you an email about an hour after this webinar concludes, you will get everything you need. All right. So for the past 9 or 10 years now, I've been helping people pass their teacher certification exams and their leadership certification exams. I was an assistant principal at a high school here in Florida. It was an awesome job, but I did leave that job to start my own company, which I'm really glad I did. And I share that with people because when you become a school leader, you learn a lot of things that you can apply in many different areas. So I'm thrilled that many of you are taking the plunge into leadership. And even if you're a brand new teacher and you don't even know if you want to be an administrator, you can watch this webinar and just get an understanding of what administrators do and some of the best practices that we're going to talk about today. All right. So I just want to go over a couple of things. Now, for this webinar, you received a free study guide, and that's great. You can use our free resources. We have tons of videos on YouTube. We have the free study guide with this webinar. We have all kinds of things. But I just want to show you where to get some other resources just in case you're looking for more. So on our website, oops, that's me. That's the webinar we're going to right now. If you go into, so let's go back to the home page. There you go. So if you go to our website here under our programs, you can click SLLA 6990. You can also click the Praxis 5412. These are both the same exams, but I'll talk about that in a second. So if we click SLLA 6990, you can see that we have a lot of information here. We have a study guide. We have, all of our resources here, and then like a big long blog with a lot of information here that is very beneficial for you. So I definitely recommend checking out that page, and we will link that up in the email that's going out to everybody. But we do have lots of different ways to get our material. So if you are looking for the study guide, we do have a study guide here. It's complete. It's got everything you need. What you have today is a free study guide with a few practice test questions. This is like the comprehensive study guide. So when you buy this from us, it's in digital form. It's emailed to you immediately after you purchase. So check your email. Make sure you put in the correct email when you order. And if you mess up and don't, you just reach out to us. We'll fix it for you. But if you prefer a physical copy, you can go over to click that button and go over to the Amazon link, and you'll see that we have over 253 5-star ratings for this book. And this is the physical study guide that will be sent to you. Now, today you're going to be receiving an offer code, which will be good for anything on our website. We can't offer discounts on KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. That's who publishes our books. So if you want to use the offer code, you can use it today on the website. Now, another thing that we have, which is pretty awesome, is the online course. I'm just going to show you that really quickly. So this is complete test prep. This has everything. This has hours of tutorial videos. It comes with the digital study guide, and it comes with an audio course. So let me just show you this a little bit. So this is what the online course looks like. You can see all these modules here, and we have an audio course down here. So let's go ahead and start this really quickly just so you can see. Of course, I have a video on how to use the course, but you get the full digital study guide. You can download that, save it to your computer. And then, of course, we have tons of videos. Here's the handouts for this part. Then we have all this information here, full-length videos, extra practice questions, and we do that for every single content category on this exam. So you get full prep there. Then, of course, we have a very comprehensive constructed response section where we go through all the constructed responses, and we have all the writing prompts there. We also have the handouts and the writing prompts with sample responses. And then finally, we have an audio course, which a lot of people are using, which I'm really excited about. This is like you just throw it in your headphones, and when you access this, it's really mobile friendly. And you can just, I'm an auditory learner, so I love stuff like this. You can just listen while you walk your dog, clean your house, whatever. This is really helpful. Now, remember, when you get the online course here, you get all of this. So the online course is full test prep. You can also just pair the audio course with the book. I do recommend, if you get the audio course, I do recommend getting the study guide, because the audio course doesn't have practice test questions, because that's really hard to do in an audio course. This is more of just like getting all the concepts, and I'm kind of talking you through them. But if you pair that with the study guide, that's a really good combo. Or if you want everything, you can just get the online course there. All right. Now, a couple of more places where you can get some free resources. If you go to our YouTube channel, we have leadership playlists in here. We can help you with, your leadership interview and all of that. So my YouTube channel has tons of information there. Of course, I do some stuff on TikTok as well. I'm trying to build up my TikTok content as much as possible. People like that as well. And then, of course, on Facebook, we have lots of stuff that we put out on Facebook every day. All right. So let's have a look at what some people are saying. People can hear me. Awesome. Will there be a replay for this webinar? Absolutely. All of our webinars are recorded, and you will get the replay link in the follow-up email that comes out after this is over. So just sit tight. We will send you an email. If you don't see the email within like an hour after this is over, please check your junk folder, because sometimes we end up there, and drag us into your main inbox so you don't miss out on any emails from us. And then also you can email us, info@kathleenjasper.com, if you have any questions or need anything. Okay. I have purchased and used the comprehensive audio course. I need help with the constructed response. All right. We're going to be doing constructed response today. So that's great. I'm going to talk you through a couple ways in which you can do that. I keep seeing a lot of people are advocating for this resource. I am sold. Awesome. Yeah, we have a lot of reviews on the SLLA that are really good. We've helped a lot of prospective leaders pass their leadership exam. So I know a lot about this test and other leadership exams. So I'm going to share a lot of those strategies with you today. All right. So let's get down to the actual webinar and what we're going to do today. So I have a presentation for you with practice test questions and a constructed response. Now, if you are doing the Praxis 5412, you do not have a constructed response, but I recommend staying, because most of the time when you apply for a leadership position, there is usually a writing component in a lot of districts. So even if you don't have to write for the test, you may have to write for the position you are trying to get, like to get into the assistant principal pool or anything like that. So I recommend you stay for that. And also, understanding the writing task will help you be a better critical thinker for the multiple choice questions. Okay. The other thing I want to go over is some resources that you should access from ETS. Okay. So I always say you need to think like a test maker. And the reason why I say this is because I was trained by a large testing company when I worked downtown in the district office and curriculum. A very big testing company came in and trained a group of us on how to write test questions and how to write test blueprints, because that's what big testing companies do. So there is always a blueprint and a test specification for every single big exam out there: ACT, SAT, SLLA, 5412, any teacher certification exam, any national exam that your students might be taking at your school. I always printed the test specs for my teachers who were teaching students, English language arts. They have to take that test at the end of the year. Everybody should get their hands on the blueprint and the test specs before they take the exam. So let me show you where to get that. Where'd I put that? Okay, let me grab this here. And that's going to be right here. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to Google SLLA Study Companion. That's what they call their test specs. And make sure that you are going to the Educational Testing Service. That's the name of the company that makes this exam. Now, on this page right here, they have a document that has all of the content categories. It has all of the skills that you're required to take. My resources are completely aligned to this document because this is like the Bible for this particular test. You can also do the Praxis 5412 Study Companion. If you do that, you can see that this comes up. It says PDF. It is in a PDF document. So I highly recommend you click that, go to that document and look at everything. Now, another place where you want to go are the PSELs. So those are the leadership standards, professional standards for educational leaders. You're definitely going to want to download this document and have a look at the information there. Now, the reason why I say that is because the language in the correct answer choices is taken from the leadership standards. The blueprint and the test is aligned to the leadership standards. So we'll link all that up in an email, but you definitely want to access those documents when you are studying for the exam. It's great to get a study guide. It's great to get an online course, and that's all good, but you want to really make sure that you understand what's going on when it comes to the specs. They call them test specs. Now, if you're an educational leader already and you're trying to get your scores up with your students, I recommend you Google the name of the test that they're taking and the term blueprint or test specifications. And typically it'll have all the standards listed that are on there. And it will have practice test questions so they can see the structure. And what I used to have teachers do is develop their own classroom assessments that kind of mirror those practice test questions in the blueprint so that the students get used to the structure. We say, oh, if you just teach to the standards, everything will be fine, right? We know that that is not true, that students have to learn how to become test takers because education is like just testing all the time now. So it really helps them. So no matter what test you're taking, whether it's this one or another one, I recommend accessing those blueprints and test specs and really digging down into those topics. Okay. Somebody's asking, do you have to memorize those standards? No, I do not recommend memorizing anything. Really, we should be thinking critically about this stuff. With the standards, they're broken up into the same content categories that the test is broken up in. You have ethical leadership, you have instructional leadership, and all of that. Just have a look at the language. You're going to see it today when I go through the practice test questions, but have a look at that language and identify those good words, good practices. 9 times out of 10, you're going to see them in the correct answer choices on the exam. The patterns are there on the test. What's the test number study guide for the FEELI? We don't prep for FEELI. We prep for the Praxis 5412 and the SLLA 6990. The FEELI is the Florida exam, and we do not prep for that exam. However, this webinar is going to help anybody taking a leadership exam, but you can just Google your test name and you can write in test specs there, and that'll help you. Okay. All right, so let's have a look now at my presentation. So we're going to dig in. And remember, you're going to get this presentation in an email. So if you just got the email and you didn't have time to download the free study guide, it's all good. I'm going to go through a few of the practice test questions on the study guide, the free study guide, but there are more. But I'm going to really dig into some of these good words, bad words you should be looking for. I want to talk a lot about strategy today, because no matter what question you're asked on the exam, strategy is really going to help you on these particular tests. So really quick, both of these exams are identical. They have the same content categories. The only thing that's different is that the SLLA has a writing component. You're going to have 4 constructed response questions, 4 essays that you have to write. Now, people tend to get really freaked out about it, but if you have a good understanding of the concepts on the multiple choice, you can apply that information on the writing. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. Now, the Praxis 5412 covers the exact same content. However, there is no writing component. So if you're taking the Praxis 5412, you get to skip the writing. However, like I said before, you will probably have some sort of writing component in order to get a job as an assistant principal. Most districts require a pretty rigorous process in getting those positions. But again, that depends on the state and the district you're working in. Now let's have a look at the content categories for this exam. Now again, 5412 and the 6990 are the same, except for this last part here. This is the writing section. I'll go over that in a second. But the first content category is strategic leadership. This is going to be everything about mission, vision, goals, how we construct those, how we develop those, how we use data to determine what our goals should be. Another big part of strategic leadership is getting the help from a community of people. They call that democratic leadership. You're not just coming up with the mission, vision, and goals. You are, getting input from your staff, your teachers. You are forming committees with the community. So it's really important that you remember that democratic component when we're talking about strategic leadership. Now, instructional leadership, this has the most questions at 27 questions. This has the most selected response questions. And the reason being is that now in education, the leader in the building really needs to be an instructional leader. Back in the day, it used to be we were kind of building leaders where we were keeping everybody safe and we were making sure the toilets were flushing and we were making sure, the facilities were running. But now there's obviously been a huge push on instructional leadership. So principals, assistant principals, superintendents all have to have that really strong foundation in curriculum and instruction, how to move the needle in terms of student achievement, closing the achievement gap, analyzing data in order to make very, very important instructional decisions. And when we answer questions on any of these content categories, but specifically for this, we want to think about student achievement. Everything we do is about student achievement. We have to move that needle and make sure that all students are achieving. That's what we do. So content category 2 is all about that. You're going to have a lot about standards alignment in there, a lot about, student engagement in there. And we have a couple questions today that will hit that. The third one is climate and cultural leadership. This is all about the climate that you cultivate in your school. Positive, open, inclusive climate and culture. You want to make sure that you are seeking out teachers and staff members from diverse communities. That's a big part of it. And that retention of good teachers in your school, which is so hard to do because a lot of people are leaving education, as many of you know. This one has 22 questions at 13% of the exam. And so this is all about just being inclusive, supporting all students. Remember, all means all students, regardless of their abilities, where they come from, their gender, anything. We are to be inclusive for all students. And then the fourth content category is ethical leadership. This is going to have a lot to do with student misconduct, teacher misconduct. You might have a few teacher misconduct questions on there. It has a lot to do about due process. Remember, we have to make sure we are adhering to students' rights, parents' rights, teachers' rights, while also keeping the school safe. There will be a lot in there about protocol and things like that. So as an instructional leader and as a building administrator, you're going to have, misconduct all over the place. How do you handle that? A big part of this is about conducting investigations first. So not just jumping to like suspending a student because the teacher told you he was cheating, or throwing the kid out of school because she got caught smoking in the bathroom. We want to make sure we conduct very extensive investigations, and we use due process. Students have due process rights in the school, and so do teachers if they are accused of misconduct. Then number 5 is organizational leadership. This is going to be all about the building, the safety of your students, the facilities. You might have some questions on there about renting facilities to other organizations. Also equal, or I should say equitable, access to the facilities. So if you allow the student Christian athletes organization, then to use the cafeteria on Wednesdays to do their meetings, then you're allowing the Student Muslim Athlete Association the same. Everybody gets the same access. We are supporting all students regardless of what organization they're in. Of course, the organizations need to be legal. They can't be like Drug Dealers of America coming to our gym to do a meeting. But of course, if it's all above board, we are giving people that opportunity to use our facilities. So we want to make sure that's equitable. And then, of course, the last one is community engagement. This one doesn't have very many questions like the organizational leadership, 16 questions. Community engagement is all about getting out of your office and going into the community. So we sometimes get trapped in our schools because there's so much going on and we have to put out so many fires. Let me know in the chat if you're already an assistant principal and, tell me how many fires you put out in a day. I'm going to say 5, 6, 7, some days 15, 20 from when the buses arrive on the bus ramp until the moment they leave. And sometimes after they leave. I'm telling you, I've had to get in my car and meet a bus down at the intersection because there's a problem, so we are putting out fires all the time. So we get trapped in our schools. Community engagement is all about leaving our offices and going out into the community. This has to do with building relationships with business leaders so that we can have, mutual relationships there to thrive in the community. This also has to do with, forming SAC committees, Student Advisory Council, PTO. We're trying to get the community engaged. Also, this has to do with being inclusive in that process. So if you need translators to come with you, if you need to reach a community who you may not speak their language, they may not speak your language, you need to make sure you're doing everything to communicate with those communities. Also, communicating data. You might have new school data that you need to share with stakeholders in the community, businesses, parents, whoever. You're going to want to make sure you're out there doing that. That's really, really important. Okay. And then, of course, we have the analysis, the constructed response, 4 questions there. And this is going to pull from all of these areas here. So you might get a strategic leadership, an instructional leadership, climate, cultural, ethical, organizational, community. The 4 constructed responses can be from any one of these areas. So you're going to want to, if you get the study guide, please read the whole study guide. People go, oh, I'm going to do the practice test. That's great, but you're not really getting the concepts. If you read the study guide, you're going to be better equipped for the constructed response, right? Now, one thing I do like to do, that I love to talk about good words, because we should be looking at good words on the test in the answer choices, okay? So one of the things that people say to me is, all the answer choices looked good. I didn't know which one was correct. Well, if you only have an option for one correct answer, there is only one correct answer. Now, if it says choose all that apply, then there might be several. But you want to be looking for these words in the answer choices. And when we work backward, and I'm going to show you how to work backward today, you're going to want to find these good words and you're going to want to zero in on those answer choices. Okay, so let's talk about it. Data-driven. Now, it may not say data-driven in the answer choice. Remember, we got to think critically here. What does data-driven mean? That means we are collecting and analyzing data before we do anything, before we make any decisions, okay? So the question might say, give you a huge, big scenario about the school and what's going on. And then in the question stem, it might say, what should the leader do first, okay? The first thing we do is collect data. Very, very important. And then we analyze the data. And then we probably consult with our team and communicate that data. And then we come up with a plan. And then we execute the plan. Okay. What will happen is in the answer choices, it'll say like all these really good things, like to do a plan, right? It might say, get the teachers in a group and have them work on strategies. You know, it's got this big whole great answer choice, but you didn't collect any data before making that decision. We have to be data driven on this exam and in life. Effective school leaders are data driven. Effective business owners are data driven. I'm constantly looking at data all day. I was as an AP and as a teacher, and now as a business owner, all I do is look at data all day to try to see where the needs are. Where do people need us the most? Where will my products work the best? So data driven is key. All right. Then another one is disaggregating data. Now, you might see the words disaggregate data. And if you see that in an answer choice, slow down, it most likely is the correct answer. But what does this mean? This means that we've collected data. We see the surface of it, right? We might see gains. We might see overall trends. But if we really want to know what's going on, we got to dig down into that data. So we dig deeper. So let's just say we have some reading data, and it basically says 50% of our kids are reading on level, 38 are below, and I don't know, in the 20 are, I'm probably over 100% there, and then another group are very, very below, right? Well, that's great. That gives us an idea, a snapshot. But then we need to dig down and say, okay, where are they low? Are they low in comprehension? Are they low in fluency? Are they low in vocabulary? Which subgroups are struggling most, right? If you see the term subgroup, that's another one, subgroup. Subgroups could be, we section students out by subgroups in terms of socioeconomic. That's a B. That should be a P. Sorry. They sometimes socioeconomic status, whether they're English language learners, whether they're in special ed, sometimes gender, sometimes race. It all depends. We want to be careful, though, when we're looking at subgroups here. And I always say this because students are more than a subgroup. It's very important to analyze data and disaggregate and kind of look and see what subgroups you're kind of analyzing. But remember, students are more than a subgroup. Just remember that. But if you see the word subgroup on the test, it's probably a good word, and disaggregated data, digging down into that. Now, another one is closing the achievement gap. This is our job. We need to make sure that all students are achieving. Now, what does that mean? So I'm going to draw you a little sad graph here. Let's say that you have one subgroup of students here, and they're achieving at high levels, bar graph here. And you have another subgroup who's down here. This is their achievement levels. We need to close this achievement gap here. Now, that doesn't mean bringing this big bar down. We don't want them to go down. We want this bar to continue to go up, right? We want students to keep achieving. But what we want to do is keep pushing up. So we're closing that gap, this little area here, the gap between the high achievers and the low achievers. And that's our job. So if you see the term closing the achievement gap, good word on the test. Now, when it comes to PD, professional development, PLCs, anything like that, we want to make sure it's differentiated and personalized to teachers. Now, we don't always get to do that because a lot of the PD is mandated by the district. But on this exam, we don't want to think about what really goes on in schools. We want to think about what we would do if we had all the time, all the resources, and all the support in the world. That is the correct answer on the test. And if we did, we would differentiate professional development to meet the needs of each and every teacher based on the data, right? We're going to look at data first before we go into this professional development. We're not just saying, oh, let's do a whole professional development initiative without ever looking at data. That's not the best thing. We got to look at the data first. And then we differentiate it based on teachers' interests, needs, and what ultimately the most important thing, what students need here. And then, of course, we always want to focus on democratic systems. Again, you might not see the term democratic system. It might say something like form a committee to make a decision, elicit the help of teachers and staff members, go out into the community, this goes on here, community engagement, to talk to people and see if they'll volunteer for a committee to make decisions. That's really, really important. And then, of course, we have resilience. Now, resilience is a theme on many leadership exams. I've been talking a lot about resilience lately. And resiliency, when it comes to leadership, is all about falling on your face and getting up. And those of you who are already APs, and I'll go look in the chat and see who you guys are in just a second. Those of you who are already APs know that being an AP is like falling on your face all day long. Like you think you're going to get all this stuff done and something happens, right? You might have this program in your mind that you thought was going to be so amazing and it flopped. Nobody did it properly. It was terrible. And so what resiliency is, we look at the data, right? We're looking at the data and we're digging down and we're disaggregating the data. And then we might implement a program based on that. And we might have done all the right things, followed the steps, did everything, surveyed the staff, made sure everybody was included, the whole thing. And it still flopped. Okay. It was still a hot mess. Well, what do we do then? Do we give up? No, we have resilience as leaders. What we do is we analyze the failure. Where was there a breakdown in communication? Where was there a problem in what I did as a leader? Typically, it's the leader's fault. I'll say 9 times out of 10, it's the leader's fault. Maybe the directions weren't given properly. Maybe there wasn't enough, whatever. We all know, we've seen it fall apart many times, okay? We find those gaps in our approach and we fix them. And then we go in and try again. Now, really quickly, off topic here, if you are applying for a leadership position, your first tendency is going to be to show the committee who you are interviewing in front of how wonderful you are and how amazing all your programs were, how you nailed it every time. Well, I've talked to a lot of committees lately, and they want to see resiliency. They want to see when you failed. They don't want every single situation you talk about in your leadership interview to be, we nailed it, we did it, we raised the scores, everything was perfect, I'm the best leader, never make mistakes. It doesn't happen that way. So you want to make sure if you're interviewing, you pepper in a few failures in there, but you say, I thought this thing was going to go off without a hitch. I did all the steps. And then when I actually implemented it, it failed. And here's why. It failed because I didn't communicate the directions properly or whatever the failure was. But I analyzed those little points where there was gaps, where there were, potential for failure. And I used that data to revise the plan. And I plan on implementing it next year and fixing those areas where I messed up. And I think it's going to be a really good situation. And if it fails again, well, I'll figure out, where there was another breakdown. That's resilience. Resilience is all about being flexible, letting things go. I read something the other day about how palm trees survive hurricanes because they're flexible. I live in Florida, so I love palm trees. And they bend like in a hurricane. If you see the palm trees here, they're like bent over and they bounce back after the winds are gone, right? Being flexible is about being resilient. The other thing is, and I didn't know this about the gumbo limbo tree, but the gumbo limbo tree will allow its limbs to break off during a big storm in Florida so that it can stay connected to the ground. The limbs, if it holds on to its limbs too tight, it can blow over. So it allows its limbs to just break off and it'll regrow new limbs, but the trunk is stable. And so I really like those metaphors for this. As leaders, we got to let things go. We got to be flexible. We can't be too rigid. We can't be too attached to outcomes. We have to know when we fail. We have to be flexible and understand that we got to make changes in ourselves and help others see those changes as well. All right. Okay. So really quickly, I'm just going to go back to here and see if anybody answered my question. Let's see here. Nobody answered to say that they were APs, but let me know if you're an AP in the or you've been an intern as an AP, and talk to me about all the fires you put out in a day-to-day basis. Okay. Somebody's saying, I'm still upset with myself. I studied so hard and used the 699 guide, and I bought last year. Daphne, you must have had you did not pass by 6 points. Well, remember resiliency. You can do it. You can 6 points. 6 points is a couple more questions. Okay. 6 points is a little bit extra on the writing. Practice, get back in there, be resilient, be flexible. It's okay. It's okay. All right. I'm an academic coach. Lots of crossovers. Yes, indeed, Megan. Okay. All right. So let's go into the practice test questions. Now I am going to talk to you about working backwards. So let's have a look at my presentation one more time. Okay. So when you are on this test, typically you have these very long questions. This one's kind of a short question, but typically they look like this. They're really long questions and even longer answer choices. Sometimes you have a data set like this. You know, it can be very daunting. This test is famous for these long scenarios. That's why I say work backwards. Okay. Now, it won't work for every single question, but remember those good words we talked about. Think like a test maker. That's my motto. Think like a test maker, not a test taker. Most people will start here. Okay. Now, this one's a short little question. So, and I see the word needs assessment, but when we're in something like this, we're not going to start up here. We're going to start with the answer choices first. All right. So let's go back to number 1 here and have a look at this. So I see the term needs assessment, so I'm going to have that in my brain. But if it was a longer paragraph, I would just start with the answer choices here. Okay. A, determining and addressing needs or gaps between current conditions and desired conditions or wants. All right. A looks good because we have determining and addressing. That's what we do with data. And of course, we have current conditions and where do we want to be? That's the needs. The need is the desired conditions. Okay. So A is looking good. B, surveying teachers to determine areas of improvement and where to allocate resources. Now, let's say you didn't know what a needs assessment is, and you might say, B is a good answer choice. We survey teachers. Here's the thing about teacher surveys, and they do have a place. If we're trying to figure out where to allocate resources, we need to be doing more than surveying teachers. Because what's going to happen? I know as a science teacher, when I was a science teacher, guess where I want the resources to go? The science classroom. The math teachers are going to say the math classroom. The reading teachers are going to say the reading classroom. Now, though that information is important, but really we should be looking at testing data and achievement data along with survey data. This is to allocate resources. You need to be doing more than surveying teachers. That's why I'm crossing this off. Now, if we're new to administration, we wouldn't know that, but surveys are great, but it's not going to give me everything I need for allocating resources. C, using student achievement data to drive decisions made in the classroom. Okay. C looks good too, but we have this in the classroom. In the classroom narrows the scope. We have to think about the entire school here. I like achievement data to drive decisions. That's data-driven decisions, but so is A. Remember I said it might not say data-driven decisions. This says determining and addressing needs or gaps. Plus it has the word needs here. You'll see that sometimes. So I still like A better. C is okay. D, analyzing resources and determining allocation based on desired student achievement. We don't analyze resources to determine allocation. You'll see that sometimes they'll mix up the words. We analyze data to determine allocation of resources. Yes, you have the term student achievement here, but be careful. We don't analyze the resources, we analyze data. D is out. Now let's look between A and C. Determining and addressing needs or gaps. Gaps. That's where a needs assessment comes in. Where are our needs? Well, the reading scores are really low this year. They've dropped 5% from last year. Okay. Let's disaggregate the data. What are the scores like in comprehension? What are the scores like in fluency? Well, kids are really struggling with their reading fluency. Okay. Now we need some training, teacher training. We need maybe some outside resources. So A is going to be the best answer here. Now let's have a look at number 2. So again, I'm not going to start up in this big paragraph, but I could start here. What should be the first step the principal takes? Okay, keep it in mind. A, form a committee of experienced teachers to analyze the data and come up with solutions. Okay, I have form a committee and I have to analyze the data. Now, very quickly, we need to be careful. I'm already forming a committee. It says first step. Now, the committee will analyze the data, but as a leader, I need to analyze the data first and get an idea of what's going on. A is okay. I'm going to leave it, but be careful. Form a committee should not be the first step. B, review the SIP and analyze current goals identified in the plan. Not a bad answer choice. This is one of those where you might think that all the answer choices look good, but we're analyzing current goals. First step should be look at data. Remember, I said that before. C, delegate part of the tasks to the assistant principal so time can be used efficiently. Sometimes C is correct. You do have to delegate. However, not in this situation. That's not the first step. I can tell you that right now. D, disaggregate the data based on subgroups and analyze achievement gaps and areas of weakness. This has everything we want. D. And I didn't even have to read the question, but let's go ahead and have a look at the question. The principal of LES High School is working on increasing the curriculum and instructional focus to include a targeted approach to student subgroups, specifically students who are identified as low socioeconomic and ESE. ESE is exceptional student education. Special ed. What should be the first step? Well, forming a committee. A is the distractor. A is the one they want you to choose. It's kind of correct, but not totally correct. But that's out once I saw D. Okay. Notice working backwards, using those good words, you're going to be able to narrow this down. All right. And then when I read the question here, I get a feel that it's needs us to look at subgroups. Disaggregating by subgroups is going to be better there. All right. Now we have another situation where we not only have a huge paragraph, we also have a set of data. Don't look at the data yet. You're going to go, oh God, all right, let me see who's got gains. All right. What are my subgroups? Okay. Let me see what's going on. No. Answer choices first, because there will probably be at least one or two answer choices we can get rid of because of bad words, and zero in on the good words and then go up and read it. Okay. So let's have a look at the answer choices. Should the school investigate other reading programs that may maximize reading gains for all student groups? Okay. I like it. That's not too bad. B, how can the achievement gap in reading performance between the total group and the subgroup be closed? What I say about achievement gap? Closing the achievement gap is the right answer pretty much every time, okay? B's looking good. C, what factors were most important in promoting improvement in the school's overall performance in reading? C sounds good too. D, how many students are in each subgroup and how does that impact the data? D is kind of like, it doesn't really matter how many kids are in each subgroup. You know what I mean? They're a subgroup. We need to analyze that. So D, I can get rid of altogether. And B, I'm zeroing in on because it says achievement gap. Okay. Now that I have that in mind, now I go into the question and look, because now I've narrowed my focus. All right, so further working backwards, I keep working backwards. After reviewing this data, the middle school principal should place the highest priority on answering which of the following questions. Well, the highest priority should be closing the achievement gap in any situation, whether you have this data or not. But let's have a look at the data. We have 49% of all students in the main subgroup passing, and we have only 33 low socioeconomic passing. That's a big gap. We need to close that gap. We have 63% of the main subgroup making gains and only 45 in low SES making gains. In year 2, look what happened here. We didn't go up very far here. We went up significantly in all students. All students went from 49 to 54, and low SES only went up 6%. All right. So still a big gap there. And again, these kids making gains only 2%. So we've got an achievement gap that needs to be closed. B is the correct answer. And I don't even have to read this. This is just a little fluff. It's all, okay, we're doing a new district reading program. Doesn't matter. We want to close the achievement gap. B is the correct answer. All right, again, we have a big old paragraph. Let's have a look at the answer choices here. Provide differentiated instruction that builds on students' unique strengths and experiences. Okay, you know I love the terms differentiated instruction and students' unique strengths and experiences. That's really, really good. All right, let's look at B. Incorporate project-based learning activities into the curriculum. All right, I like B. I like A better. A is my star right now. B's okay. C, develop individualized performance criteria to drive instruction and assessment for each student. Okay, C sounds good. Develop individualized performance criteria. That means you are individualizing the tests for each student. We can't do that. They have to be assessed on like a standard assessment. Now for teacher exams, we can differentiate, the products that students give us. If a kid wants to write an essay versus do a video or something like that. But when it comes to school, as a building administrator, you have to make sure that all students are prepared for the standardized assessment at the end of the year. So C is out. We don't develop individualized performance criteria. We do differentiate instruction, but that's so that they can meet the standards, and the standards are not individualized. D, create and implement standards aligned independent study programs. Okay, I like standards aligned, but there's a little problem here with independent study programs. I'm not sure if that's going to work. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and read the question stem first, starting here. The leadership team can best support teachers who serve these students by providing teacher with professional development aimed at improving their ability to. Well, this is a professional development question. And if we're talking professional development, we're going to want our teachers to differentiate instruction. A is still my front runner. Let's go back up to the whole thing. After a needs assessment, so after collecting the data and looking at it, the leadership team has decided to focus on certain subgroups within the school, especially ELLs and low SES. So that's English language learners and low socioeconomic students. The needs assessment data show these students tend to perform at substantially lower levels than their peers in both the classroom and on standardized tests. Well, we're talking about differentiating for these students who are struggling, so A is the best answer. But notice I got to that before I ever read any of the question. All right, let's have a look at this question here. I'm not sure what number this is because it looks like I didn't put the number in there. It might be towards... Oh, this is the constructed response. Sorry. Okay, we're going to go to the constructed response in just a second. Let me go back here and see if anybody has any questions. Okay. People are saying, I like this strategy. Yes, this strategy is really important on the SLLA 6990 because if you start at the top and you start reading the question, you're getting lost in a scenario and half of it is fluff. They're like writing these long scenarios. And I know this because I write these scenarios. Okay. So, skip it. Go to the answer choices first. Now, it doesn't mean every time you're going to get it, but I've done experiments where I've done practice tests and I don't even read the questions. I just look at the answer choices and I score like an 80 just by looking at the answer choices. Don't do that. Read the questions eventually, but work backwards. I take the SLLA on February 1st. I have completed the study guide and I'm currently working on the audio course. How do I best use the next few weeks to be successful? All right, Megan, thank you so much for your question. So you've got the book, you've worked through it. Awesome. And now you've got the audio course. That's fantastic. You're probably sick of listening to me. What I would do is review parts of the book. I would also really hone in on the test specs. I would go in and download that document from ETS. And again, we'll give you the link in the follow-up email for that. And I would just keep thinking about it, have conversations with yourself about disaggregating data and, being data driven and reaching out to the community. Try to find some topics that you could kind of talk to and understand. It sounds like you've really dug into the content. And so you probably have that critical thinking. You may also want to get on ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to generate you some writing prompts for the SLLA 6990 about leadership. You can even throw in one of my writing prompts from the book into ChatGPT and say, can you give me a writing prompt similar to this? And it will. I love ChatGPT. So you might want to just keep working on that writing and keep practicing. Or you can take the prompts in the book and write from a different perspective. So you may have worked through all the constructed responses. Now the challenge, this will challenge you. Now write from a different perspective. So you've done it. I'm going to show you one way today how to do it. Maybe you flip it and decide to focus on another approach. Okay. How often do the passing scores change on the test? Okay. So the passing scores don't change on the test. The passing scores are set by your state. So they don't change. And a lot of people think the test changes because when they go in to take it the first time, they get a different test than the second time. That doesn't mean the test changed. It just means you got a different version of the test. They're not going to keep giving you the same version of the test over and over again. That would compromise test security and mess up reliability. So you may not get the same test that you got when you went last month. It doesn't mean the test changed. The test is coming from the same item banks that they have and is aligned to the same standards. When a test changes, there is usually a huge release, a press release on it. And usually it happens because the leadership standards change or they have added, some standards have been added to. And usually the changes are not that big because it costs a lot of money to change a test. All right. How many multiple choice questions is passing? Okay. So I get this a lot. How do you figure out how many you need to score in order to pass? First of all, this is impossible to predict exactly. All right. So here's what I say. You should be trying to get a 75% in practice. Now, a lot of states require a 169 on the exam, a 171 on the exam. So that all depends. But I always say 75% or higher, you are in the safe zone of passing the selected response. Now, it's impossible for me to tell you exactly what you need to do on the writing because that is graded by a computer and a live person. So it's kind of subjective. But when we're talking about multiple choice, I say a 75%. Now, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, there is a way to figure out your scale score. Now, remember, scale scores are a complicated way of figuring out your score on a test. And big testing companies use a scale score because you may get version A of the test. I may get version B of the test. This person may get version C of the test. And they have to make sure there's continuity among the test forms. And so they do a scale score. So if, let's say the passing score for your state is a 169, you probably got about 69, if you're just talking multiple choice, you probably got around a 69% correct. So what you basically do is take your percentage, drop the percentage and add a 100. And you can, that's usually your scale score. Now, again, some questions are worth more than others. Some are choose all that apply. They're weighted heavier than the ones that are just single answers. And then you have the constructed response, which is a whole other situation. That's out of, 12 points and you have multiple graders and that's 25% of the test. So it's very difficult for you to pinpoint. What I say is practice your writing, making sure that you are, I'm going to show you that today, making sure you're hitting everything on there, and then try to score 75% or higher in practice. Because if you do that, you'll be in the safe zone. Can the constructed response be written in bullet format? It can. I would not just do bullets though. I use bullets. I'm going to show you in a minute how to do it. We'll do that. Okay. So my thing is like, I understand everybody wants to know how many, we're just like kids, right? How many do I need to get right to pass? You know, they say the same thing. How many do I need to get right to get an A? You know, but it's more complicated than that because it's a scale score. So 75% on the multiple choice. And let's talk about the constructed response here. All right. Let me share. Okay, so you're going to get something like this, and it's good, and you have 4 of these to do. Now, this one's a more complex one. Sometimes you'll get a shorter one, but you will have 4 of these to do, and you have to move quickly. You don't have all the time in the world. Okay, so again, work backwards. Don't start up here. What's going to happen is you're going to read all this and you're going to go, oh my gosh. And then you're going to read the task and you're going to forget what you read and you're going to have to go back up here and read it again. Don't do that. Start with the task. Start with the 1, 2, 3, or sometimes it's in bullets. It just depends on what question you get. So let's have a look at that first. Conduct a nuanced analysis of the provided mathematics achievement data. What does that mean? We're going to summarize what's going on here. Quick summary. Not every little data point, just a few things that we can see. All right. Discuss ways to implement practices to measure student progress throughout the school year. Well, I can do this without even looking at the data. Right away, I can think formative assessments, diagnostic assessments, using the formative data in professional learning communities so our teachers can use it to differentiate instruction. So while I might have my map, my note paper out, I might put number 1. Let me go to a blank. Put a blank here. So let's do map. So here's concept 1. So I have to do a quick summary. And then I'm going to talk about formative data because that's how I'm going to measure student progress. That's how you measure student progress is through formative data, progress monitoring. All right. So I'm just quickly, mapping this out, and my handwriting is terrible. I'm sorry, you guys. I haven't written on this thing in a while, so it's going to be kind of crazy. All right. Number 2, formulate a comprehensive strategy for engaging teachers in this process, so they are properly trained to use data to make instructional decisions. All right. So the second one is PD, professional development, probably democratic, obviously, data-driven, probably going to use a little PLC action in there, just jotting down ideas, okay? Number 3, let's go here. Anticipate potential challenges and complications in implementing your plan. Now, I might have to look at the scenario for that, but what are the challenges all the time? Adverse to change, right? New teachers may not know. New teacher limitations, time, money, those are always time, money, resources. I mean, those are, if you're taking this test, you know that those are the challenges, right? So I've got kind of a map here. I'm reading the task first, and I'm already ahead of the game. Now I go in and have a look. All right. So I'm going to continue to work backwards here. The Extent School Improvement Plan incorporates new mathematics curriculum, tailored professional development for teachers, and additional resources aimed at struggling students. In your assessment, you discern that the plan, while research-based, lacks mechanisms for measuring student progress. This happens a lot. We got all these big ideas and we don't know how to measure it. This happens all the time, incrementally throughout the year. Right away, formative data is going to fix that situation, right? Further working backwards, let's have a look at the data. We have 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, so we're in middle school. So we have overall performance. 55% of 6th graders are at proficiency, 48 at 7th, and 51 at 8th. They're all in the same zone. Special education, though, is real low, especially in 7th grade, 28% meeting proficiency. Low socioeconomic, not as low as special ed, but still lower than the average student. General education, they're up there. And then English language learners are low as well. So we got to close the achievement gap. Look, all the data looks the same. They keep doing this. 55% or lower typically meet proficiency. We've done all this testing. We've done all these programs. When it comes to reading, math is a little different. This is a math question, but when it comes to reading gains, they've stayed the same. They're at 50 to 55%. I've been looking at that data for 15 years now. Hasn't really moved, but that's a discussion for another time. They think testing is going to help it. But anyway, so we can see gaps here. So if I'm going to summarize the data really quickly, I'm going to talk about how special education students are not meeting proficiency. We've got gaps from our subgroups. I might use some of that terminology in there. Just a quick couple sentences about that, all right? All right, let's go now up to the main part. As an aspiring school leader, you are assigned to the task of evaluating school improvement plan aimed at elevating student achievement in mathematics. The most recent performance data in math for grades 6 through 8, segmented by various subgroups, is as follows. And then we have the data there. All right, now I've got my map. I'm already ahead of the game. I know I'm going to use formative data. I know I'm going to use PLCs, professional development, and I'm going to anticipate these barriers here. All right, so let's have a look at what I did here. Sorry about all the text on the page, but this is a constructed response question, so we need to make sure we get it all in. And it's going to be 3 paragraphs. Why? Because I have 3 bullets, 3 tasks here. So make it easy on the grader. Paragraph 1 is going to satisfy number 1. Paragraph 2 is going to satisfy number 2. Paragraph 3 is going to satisfy number 3. Now, mine are kind of long because I had time to do that. You do not have to make it this long. You can use very simple language. And of course, this is my job. I write these books. Mine's going to sound real fancy. I still make lots of mistakes, but you can just answer the question. So the question was, for number 1, conduct a nuanced analysis and discuss ways to implement measuring student progress. So what does the data say? And how can we go about measuring student progress over time? Okay. So here we go. The data set reveals substantial disparities. You could say a big achievement gap. You could say, Deficits, you could say a lot of different things. Substantial disparities in mathematic proficiency across diverse student subgroups. And then I say, very important here, for instance, for example, when you use the term for example, you're telling the grader that you are being specific in what you're about to talk about. That's going to get you points. Special education students manifest a particularly low achievement rate. All right, so I talk about how special ed kids are low, depending on the grade level. Similarly, ELLs, English language learners, and students from low socioeconomic backgrounds also underperformed compared to general education students. To meet the needs of these students throughout the academic year, we will implement department-wide formative assessments. Remember, I said formative assessment is going to be the way I do this. Well, what's formative assessments? Hopefully you know that if you're at this part of your career. Formative assessments are ongoing formative checks that teachers use to make instructional decisions, and you can measure student progress. They're a progress monitoring tool. This approach uses periodic low-stakes assessments and student self-assessments to monitor progress. So now I don't just say formative assessments, I tell you a little bit that what they are so that you know as the person grading my essay that I have appropriate content knowledge. In addition, math teachers will use their weekly professional learning communities, what I said I was going to use PLCs, to build common formative assessments. This is always something good to do, using common formative assessments, because then you're all measuring the same thing. If you're using one assessment tool and your colleague is using another, let's say you're on the math team, I'm using a word problem test. You're using a multiple choice test with just problems on it. We're not getting the same formative data. So we want to build common assessments so we have the same measure. Building common formative assessments will help the math team build continuity throughout the department and will ensure effective data analysis and decision making. So notice I reviewed the data like it asked, check. I give specifics about it. I talk about special ed kids, ELL kids, low socioeconomic kids. Then I talk about formative assessments. That's how we're going to measure. Give a couple of examples about it. Low stakes, periodic checks. I talk about PLCs. I got sprinkled in all that little specific information. And then I talk about why it works. That's called rationale. Building common and formative assessments will help the math team build continuity throughout the department. So I say why it's a good idea. All right, so 1 is done. 2, formulate a comprehensive strategy for engaging teachers in the process. So we know we're going to use formative data and have teachers share that formative data and build common assessments. Well, that's great to have the plan. How are we going to get teachers to do it? Okay, so that's going to be paragraph 2. The next step is to implement a comprehensive strategy for teacher engagement in the process. Now, somebody asked about bullets. You could say this will include, and then do 3 or 4 bullets there. That's fine. But I would recommend also having, full complete sentences around that. I use headings in my answers sometimes. I use bullets sometimes. It just depends. But you could say implementing comprehensive strategy for teacher engagement will include, and then you could list them there. That would be fine too. But then you would need more than just the bullets. You would need to explain and give some examples. Implementation will include professional development and data literacy. Why do we do that? Well, teachers need to learn to design common assessments and how to disaggregate the formative data. That's what I say here. So it's great to have a plan to use formative data, but we got to train teachers to do it. So we're going to implement a comprehensive strategy for teacher engagement that satisfies that second bullet in the task of this writing task. But now I got to tell you what that looks like. Implementation will include professional development and data literacy. How do we read that formative data? And effective PLCs. How do we use it together as a group? Where teachers will learn to design common assessments. They don't know how to make common assessments yet. We got to show them as a team. And here's that word, disaggregate the formative assessment data to produce and make instructional decisions. Very good. The professional development will be, here's important, teacher-led. Very important to get engagement with teachers. If the administrator just stands up there and gives all the professional development, they're not going to listen. Teachers listen to teachers. They don't particularly like administrators. That's okay. Get teachers to lead it with 2 respected teachers from the team administering the training. So get a couple that are good and who are excited about the program. We want buy-in. Administration will be available to support, but it's going to be teacher-led. To support our new teachers, novice teachers will be paired with instructional coaches skilled in data-driven instruction. So we got to remember those novice teachers, because this is going to be a lot. Remember your first year teaching? Buried. Now you're like, oh, we're going to do common assessments. The new teachers are going to lose it. They're going to be so underwater. So we got to help them take some stuff off their plate. All right. Now the third one is here. Anticipate potential challenges and complications in implementing your plan. So now I got to, good leaders, this is about resiliency. Where are we going to have pushback? Where is there going to be issues? Time, money, resources, and also this is a lot to learn. Teachers might be like, I don't want to do another thing. And who can blame them? They're doing a lot. All right, so let's have a look here. Anticipating challenges and barriers to the process is essential. So this is just an intro thing. You might start here. You can start here. Two of the biggest barriers to this plan are time constraints and lack of experience within the department. I did talk about the new teachers and of course, time, money. Time is money. Those are going to be the big ones. To combat the time constraints, so now I'm going to talk about this and get specific. We will use budget reallocations to fund substitute teachers who can relieve regular math faculty weekly. Now you might be saying, yeah, right. When is the principal ever going to get me a sub so I can attend PLCs? Well, there are principals who do it. And remember that this is pie in the sky ideas on this exam. All you have to do is, validate it with specific examples on how you're going to do it. So we're saying here, we're going to use budget reallocations. We're going to fund substitute teachers. Now, there's no money, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're ambitious. Providing them with the needed time for their PLCs. So I'm basically the principal. I'm going to say, hey, on Wednesdays, 5th period, I'm getting you a sub. You're going to work in your PLCs during that time so that they don't have to do it on their planning. So they don't have to do it 3 hours after school. We should be paying them to do it. This also ensures faculty are getting paid for the time they spend on the project. This is going to create buy-in. Teachers are going to go, oh, I get to do this during 5th period. I don't have to do this after school when I'm tired and I want to go home. Okay, so this helps with buy-in. Along with pairing novice teachers with those who are more experienced, we talked about that in the previous paragraph, we will implement a scaffolded, good word, professional development approach. Remember, the teachers are now kind of like our students. We need to scaffold and differentiate to meet their needs. A veteran teacher is going to be more experienced in this area than our brand new teacher. So we need to differentiate the professional development and scaffold for those newbies, beginning with basic data literacy and progressing to advanced instructional strategies. Notice this will be differentiated. So all teachers' professional development needs are met. Finally, the administrative team will be dedicated to supporting all faculty in the implementation. All right, so did I cover all three? Yes, I did. And I used a lot of the terminology that is in there from the book, differentiated professional development, formative assessment to progress monitor, closing the achievement gap, all of that. Very, very important. You pull those good words. Remember those good words I'm talking about? You want to take those good words and put them in your constructed response. And I have a whole good words list in the back of the study guide. It's got them all that you'll see. All right. All right. So let's have a look. These narratives make me so nervous. Did people feel like they had adequate time to think and respond? I know they make you nervous. These are big ones, but that's part of it. I think working backwards will help you with the time constraint. So don't get too lost in the scenario of the writing task. Go to the actual bullets where it's asking you to do something. It'll have 2 or 3. And take out your notebook paper and write down things that you would do regardless of what the data says. Even if I don't care what the data says, I'm using formative assessment in my schools to monitor progress. I'm using differentiated professional development. Those are things that are universal across all data sets. So try to find some areas that you're good at writing to and use them regardless. You still have to look over the data and respond. But a lot of that stuff I came up with without really getting too bogged down into the narratives. All right. You have 75 minutes. Yana, thank you so much. You have 75 minutes for the 4 constructed responses. So you have you got an hour and 15 minutes. Okay. So 20-ish minutes a piece. So, you got to move. You got to move, and you got to have time to prove. So keep practicing, keep practicing, keep practicing. All right. And our online course, our study guide, or my YouTube channel, free stuff will help you with that. Okay. All right. Any more questions in there? I don't know if Yana put, I'm sure she did. I can't see it. Yana, were you able to put the offer code in there? We do have an offer code for those of you who are attending today. It's 20% off. If you want the offer code, you can always hop over and sign up for this webinar, and then we send you the offer code in the email. I am so thrilled you were here with me today. It's a rainy day here in Southwest Florida. It's a little muggy out, and I'm so excited to be back in the new year, back in our routines. I am like done with these holidays. I'm ready to get moving on, and I am thrilled you're here and tackling your goals today. So if you have any questions, you can email us at info@kathleenjasper.com. I recommend checking out, let's just do it one more time so you can see all the resources so you know where to go. So, of course, I have my YouTube channel. I'm live there right now. I've got all information, and I have leadership playlist. Go to the playlist and you'll be able to find, where's my leadership? School leadership right here. There's a ton of 23 videos in there. I also go through the interview process and all of that. So check that out. We have our resources, paid resources here, online course, audio course, all that. We also have this free webinar you can rewatch and check out. Let's see here. The online course. Remember, we have a very comprehensive online course, and you're getting 20% off. And of course, we've got digital. It's got all kinds of stuff in this online course. There's so much to do here. TikTok. Got a lot going on TikTok. So I have a lot of writing tutorials on TikTok. Also how to use ChatGPT when you're writing. Let's go to this one. Remember your PSELs, Professional Standards for Educational Leaders. You're going to want to look at that. And you're going to want to look at the 6990 Study Companion right here, or the Praxis 5412 Study Companion. You're going to want to grab that. And then, just keep trying, keep going. And I am here for you. So just email us if you need anything. Let us know if you have any questions. Be on the lookout for that email coming in about an hour once this is finished. I'm only 12 minutes over, which is great. Usually I go way, way over, but we covered a lot today. Rewatch this webinar when you need to, and I look forward to hearing from you. I know you're going to nail it. You're going to do great. Just keep trying. Remember resilience. Be the palm tree. Be the gumbo limbo tree. That's my mantra this year. Thank you so much for joining me today.